This is the Sigma 100-400 and the Sony A6400. And I think that this is the best setup if you're just getting into wildlife photography. Let me show you why. I also want to say a special thank you to Sigma UK for loaning me the use of this lens. However, they don't get any input into the video and all the opinions expressed in this video are my own. Now, the most important thing that you're looking for when you're first getting into wildlife photography is, can your lens actually reach far enough to be able to frame your subject? And if you've only ever used your phone for photography, you might think that the zoom is measured in X's. So 1x, 2x, 5x, 10x. But frankly, this is a stupid measurement because what are they timesing? 1 times what? Whereas in photography, we actually have a scale that you can use in order to determine how far your lens can reach. And this is called focal length. But just how much focal length do you need for wildlife photography? Well, it's going to very much depend on the situation you're trying to take photographs in. For example, if you're just taking photos down the park or trying to photograph larger animals, say for example down at the zoo, then a lens which can reach between about 100 and 300 millimeters is probably going to be more than enough for you. But if you're trying to do more traditional wildlife photography, such as trying to photograph birds in the trees, or if you just can't get close enough to your subject, for example, if there's a dangerous situation, like if you're photographing deers during the rutting season, then you're going to need a longer focal length. And in most situations, I would recommend using a focal length of about 600 millimeters, which then does raise an interesting question as to why am I suggesting buying a lens which can only reach from 100 millimeters up to 400 millimeters?
Why?
Well, this is where we have to start talking about the camera itself. This camera right here is the Sony A6400, and it has a special feature which allows this lens to become a 150 to 600 millimeter lens. And this ultimately means that this setup here is actually able to reach the same distance as this setup right here. And this is because these two cameras have different size sensors. This camera on the right is a full frame camera, whereas the Sony A6400 is what's known as an APS-C size sensor. What that means is the sensor is smaller, meaning that the effective focal range of the lens is 1.5 times bigger than our full frame equivalent, which, using a quick bit of maths, allows our lens to go from 150 to 600 millimeters. This sensor is 24 megapixels and the lens itself is super sharp. This just means that if you ever find that 600 millimeters isn't really enough for your photograph, then you can crop into it and you can still come away with lots of detail. Now, the other benefit that I wanted to mention is that this setup right here, which is the full frame setup, weighs about 1 kilo more than our APS-C equivalent. This, when you're traveling quite a long distance, really does make quite the difference. I find that this setup is super light to carry around. You can carry it around pretty freely with just a couple of fingers, which is fantastic. Whereas this setup,
It's not just big, it's huge.
But how well does this camera and lens perform when we're actually out and about shooting wildlife photography? Now, one of the most challenging situations when you're photographing wildlife is photographing birds in flight. But this lens and camera combination handles it really well. The autofocus on this camera is absolutely fantastic, and the motor and the lens pairs with this really well, and this pairing really helps you to keep up with those faster moving subjects, which is ever so important with wildlife photography. One really nice thing about the autofocus found in this camera is that it has over 400 different phase detection points. What this ultimately means is that 84% of the frame is covered, so it doesn't matter where your subject moves within the frame, the camera is going to be able to track it, and that is really useful when you're photographing unpredictable subjects like you see in wildlife photography.
I will look for you. I will find you.
It also has real-time tracking and animal IAF, which I find, if you're able to get close enough to the subject where it's able to detect the eye, just allows you to get that really critically sharp focus, which is really nice to have. On top of this, the camera shoots at 11 frames per second, which is really useful when we're photographing birds in flight, for example, as it allows us to get lots of different wing positions to choose from. And it also means that we've got more opportunity to get a really sharp shot. But how long can you shoot before you fill up the buffer in your camera? Well, it depends what file you're shooting on. If you're shooting with JPEG only, the A6400 will shoot 99 photos before you start to hit the buffer. And this is where the camera will start to slow down. It'll still take photos, just not taking them at 11 frames per second. Now, this is more than enough for most wildlife situations. I can't imagine too many things where I'm having to shoot for 9 seconds straight. However, if you're shooting raw files, which I generally suggest that you should, because it just has more detail in it and it means that you can do a little bit more in terms of the editing, then the A6400 can shoot 46 frames before it starts to hit that buffer. Again, this is about 4 seconds of shooting, which should be enough for most situations. However, if you do find that you're ever in a situation where you are shooting a lot, then in this sort of situation, I'd probably suggest to stick into small bursts. This just means that you're not going to hit that buffer and that you'll keep being able to shoot at 11 frames per second. Now, another thing that we need to consider is just how well this camera and lens combination performs in low light situations. Given that the A6400 has that APS-C size sensor that we talked a little bit about earlier, it's not going to be collecting as much light at one time compared to a full frame camera, and as such we can't push it as hard. However, I have found that shooting between ISO 100 and 6400 produces nice clean images that we can use, especially if you're using software such as Lightroom's denoise feature, or my preferred option, which is DxO Pure Raw 6. Now, this lens can only open up to f6.3, which is not a particularly bright lens. So in order to let in enough light into your camera, you might find that you're having to reduce your shutter speed just to correctly expose your photographs.
Can we stop walking in slow-mo now?
One thing that's really useful in these situations is the ability to stabilize your camera. If you have access to tripods, obviously this is going to be a very useful option in this scenario, but if you're shooting handheld, then you're going to want some form of stabilization in your setup. On this setup right here, the A6400 does not have any internal stabilization. However, in the 100 to 400, there is an optical image stabilizer, which I find works really, really well, and it just allows me to shoot with slower shutter speeds than I otherwise would. And this optical stabilization was really useful when shooting these beavers, as it was on a shaded river just before sunset. So ultimately, a very, very dark situation, and I was still able to get some lovely sharp shots. You'll see on the lens that there are 2 different modes for stabilization. One of them is for general use when you're out and about shooting. The other one is for panning. Now, usually when I'm shooting wildlife, I'm just going to be sticking with that general mode. However, I did find the panning feature useful recently when I went up to Donington Park and photographed cars which were going around the racetrack. Looking at some of the shutter speeds I was able to achieve, it's rather fantastic just how good the technology is. Now, not every photo that you're going to take at these slow shutter speeds is going to be that sharp, but with access to that 11 frames per second, hopefully you're going to be able to come away with a few nice photos. But if you want some more tips on shooting in lower light situations, I'll leave a link to a video down in the description down below, which hopefully you'll find useful. Another feature of this setup that I wanted to talk about, which you might find interesting, is the minimum focus of this lens. This is particularly useful when we're trying to photograph smaller subjects, for example, butterflies. Now, the minimum focus distance on this lens is not particularly great, coming in about 44 centimeters. However, given that the camera is an APS-C sensor, you do get that little bit of extra zoom, so you are able to get a little bit closer to your subject. Hopefully you're seeing some sample images now, where you'll see the initial framing that you're able to get. You'll see that on smaller subjects, such as really tiny little butterflies, you are going to have to crop into your subject a little bit more. However, as we talked about earlier, the camera has a 24 megapixel sensor, so you do still come away with a nice bit of detail. Overall, I wouldn't say that this minimum focus thing is a deal breaker, because it's probably not what you're buying this setup for. It's ultimately just a nice addition, but it's probably one that you should be aware of. Now, one thing I wanted to mention in terms of the handling of this body, which definitely people would mention in the comments if I didn't mention it here, the grip on this camera is kind of notoriously quite small. I've got pretty decent sized hands, and I would say my pinky generally will fall off the bottom of it quite a lot. I don't find that this is too much of an issue, to be honest. Because the overall setup is quite light, I don't feel that you really need your whole hand to, bare grip the setup. If you really were frustrated about it, you can either get a battery grip for the bottom, or you could put a cage onto the overall camera and you could get around it this way. The other thing to mention, I guess, would be the throw of the lens. That's ultimately how much you have to twist it to get it to go from 100 millimeters to 400 millimeters. When you're out in the field, it's quite a long throw. I would say it's over sort of full wrist turn. However, one nice thing that you can do with this setup is not only can you twist it to get it from 100 to 400, but it also works as a push-pull mechanism. What's nice with this push-pull is it just keeps everything in one plane, so I find it a little bit easier to track my subject, if that makes sense. If not, stick to twisting and you're absolutely fine. Maybe it's just me. Now, in the interest of fairness, I wanted to mention a couple of alternatives that you could look into. One is the Tamron 150 to 500. With this lens, it's a little bit more expensive, but it does allow you to get a little bit more reach. Now, this little bit of extra reach is quite nice on a full frame camera. However, as we talked about earlier, because of the APS-C size sensor in this camera, I would say that the 600mm that you're getting from this setup is probably going to be more than enough for when you're just starting. Now, I'll talk about full frame cameras in just a moment, but for now I want to talk a little bit more about another lens which has just been released as of making this video, which is the Sony 100 to 400 f5.6 to f8. Now, for the sake of fairness, I've not used the 100 to 400 from Sony, so if any of you have used it, then do share your experiences down in the comments down below, as I think it'll be useful for people to read. However, for me, I'd probably still stick with the Sigma 100 to 400. The reason being is that this lens right here is f6.3 at the long end, whereas the Sony is f8 at the long end. This just means that it's letting in less light at any one time, meaning that it's not going to be as good in the low light situations, which, as we talked a little bit about earlier, is where these APS-C size sensors struggle. So really, if we can get that little bit extra light, it's just going to make our shooting experience that bit easier. The benefit, however, from what I can see from the Sony lens, is it is a little bit cheaper and it still has that optical stabilisation, which I talked about is so beneficial in this Sigma lens. And the final camera that I wanted to mention in terms of the beginner setup is the Sony A6000. So this is an earlier model than this A6400. It's the previous generation and it's the really budget, basic friendly option. This camera right here, the A6400, you can currently get used for about £400. However, I was really lucky to find one at £300. However, the Sony A6000 currently goes for about £300 to £350. So a little bit cheaper than this camera, so you're saving there. It also has a 24 megapixel APS-C size sensor, so you're getting that same focal range that you would do with this lens. The difference is really the autofocus between these two systems. Obviously, being an older camera, it's going to be a little bit slower and it might be a little bit less accurate than the A6400. But if you'd like to save £100, I do think it's a really great option. And if you'd like to see a full review on that camera, again, I'll leave a link to that video down below in the comments down below. So I've covered why I think this camera is a really great value in terms of the performance that you're getting for the price. But now I want to talk about where you go from here once you are fully hooked on wildlife photography and want to take this camera setup to the next level. Well, what's really nice with this setup is that it's interchangeable with the rest of the Sony system. For example, if you found that you were struggling in low light and you wanted to upgrade into a full frame camera like the Sony A7 IV, then you can do that. And this is because the 100 to 400 is compatible with that full frame sensor. Or if you find that you're wanting to get extra reach, then you could sell the 100 to 400 and look to pick up one of the other Sony telephoto lenses. Me personally, as my day-to-day camera, I use the Sigma 150 to 600 and absolutely love it. And if I was to put that 150 to 600 on this body, then I would be getting an effective focal range of 900mm, which for wildlife photography is massively OP. And the really nice thing with the Sony system generally is there's lots of different options for telephoto lenses that you can move into from here. What's nice when you do buy these cameras is that they generally hold their value really, really well. When buying older cameras like this as well, is that the used market is really well established now. This means that you're able to get up great copies at a great price. For example, I was able to find this A6400 for 300 quid, which is absolutely fantastic. Generally, if you're looking for this setup, I would say that the camera body is going to come in at about £450, and the 100 to 400 is probably going to be somewhere in the region of about £600 used. So I really hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, YouTube is going to be recommending a video somewhere here for you. And then finally, thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.